Welcome to LifeGLOSS, a beauty podcast for sassy and seasoned women who have lived life and have a drawer full of lip gloss to prove it.
Ooh. Welcome back, LifeGLOSS. We're here with Javon Ford, everyone's favorite cosmetic chemist. He's infamous on TikTok and has been flown around the world by the top brands. We know him for breaking down how to read an IL sheet, what ingredients are good for the skin, what you should avoid. He's most famous for talking about hair care ingredients, what works, what doesn't work. He just breaks down all the brouhaha and gets down to the nitty gritty. So we're going to dive in and talk to Javon today. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We are so excited to talk to you because I want to dive right in and learn a little bit about who you are. What is your background? You are huge on TikTok. You have this mission to demystify ingredient lists, which I love. And we're going to get into all these specific questions about what products do and how to read a list and what's good and what's bad. But just tell us a little bit about why did you become a cosmetic chemist and what is your background? Who are you, Javon Ford?
All right. So I have a bachelor's in chemistry from Howard University. And I knew since sophomore year I wanted to do something with, I knew since freshman year I wanted to be a chemistry major. That was decided. I initially was pre-med, but then I realized I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to go the PhD route because it just was not my thing. Theoretical chemistry, where you're spending years on a research project without any concrete basis, just wasn't my forte. You know, that's the bulk of PhDs. It's philosophy, after all, philosophy of science, doctor philosophy. And I'm like, no, I want something a little bit more practical, a little bit more grounded. And so I went to the American Chemical Society website and I came across like all the different career options you can do in chemistry, ranging from art conservatorship, where you work at the Smithsonian to restore artwork, which sounds like a really cool job, but it pays like nothing. And then there was formulation science that involved everything from cosmetics to over-the-counter drugs to even like consumer good products like detergent, dish detergent, and laundry detergent. I'm like, okay, that's really cool. And so I started pursuing a career with that, applied to like L'Oreal internships, a L'Oreal job. And L'Oreal was like, we like you, but you don't have the 2 to 3 year entry level experience we're looking for. It's one of those careers. So I wound up in South Carolina as a nuclear engineer. That was the only job I got to do out of college.
Not a bad one.
Not too shabby.
No.
Well, it's weird, right? Like I didn't have entry level experience to make like lipstick, but sure, you can work with a Cold War era nuclear reactor. Of course, there's like a lot of checks and balances, but still like, oh, that's funny how that works. So while I was there, I created my own cosmetic line because I did theater. I did theater in high school and college, and a lot of innovation comes out when you realize that there's a problem. So in theater, there was still at this time like a lack of shade diversity, especially in like heavy duty makeup that can survive under high wattage lighting and sweat proof. So I started working on like a customizable foundation and then eventually moving into skincare. And I did that for 3 years before biting the bullet and moving out here to LA and finally working for contract manufacturers who are the pretty much the bread and butter of the cosmetic industry. Most skincare, makeup, and hair care is made by contract manufacturers. Very few brands own their formulas. They outsource it. Not necessarily private label. It's still customized for them, but it's a manufacturer like my former employers who are the ones doing the formulation and the development.
I mean, as a mom who just got back from doing college tours, I am so impressed with your educational background and your path to where you are now, and what you're doing and how you're sort of taking, how you took a career and you did a shift and went into something you were passionate about, which is what I think everyone out there wants, their offspring to do. But how did you take that and now turn this whole thing upside down and what made you want to go on TikTok and talk about all of this?
It was random. So I had created a YouTube channel during my second contract manufacturer job. And it only got like 300 views. I did 2 videos on like SPF and I just stopped. And then a year went by and because I moved to LA for 2 reasons, cosmetic chemistry and also screenwriting. I was working on a concept trailer for a TV script I had written, and I needed $10,000 because I wanted it to be like professionally filmed. And so I started a Kickstarter campaign at the behest of one of my coworkers at the time, who was like, "Oh, make a Kickstarter. You should make a TikTok to promote the Kickstarter." So I did that. That's why I made TikTok. Made my TikTok account. I did like 2 videos on that, and then the third video was randomly me in the lab just discussing hyaluronic acid and the fact that at the time, like a lot of brands advertise that they use 100% hyaluronic acid, and I want people to understand that that's not 100% hyaluronic acid. That's 100% of a complex, maybe, or it's mainly a marketing term. That hyaluronic acid is really above 2% because that's just, well, physiologically impossible because it'll get like it'll turn into like a really thick viscous gel that is impossible to pump out of like a dropper or a pump bottle. And that video got like 120,000 views in 24 hours, and I woke up to like 7,000 followers. I'm like, where y'all come from? And it just grew from there.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get more into ingredients. Hillary, I know you have some great questions.
Yes, I love that your path follows what, the audience demands. And it's interesting. Susan and I know from being in beauty how confusing it can be for women. So it doesn't surprise us, but it delights us to see how much you're growing and how much you're sharing with women. So tell us about the three most common ingredient misunderstandings. What ingredients or what misunderstandings are there that you run into or that you're passionate about clearing the air on?
The biggest and most detrimental from like a health perspective, because as nice as cosmetic is, a lot of it is still physiological, and a lot of them are still drugs, like sunscreen. And the biggest myth, the most persistent and most damaging, is that sunscreen causes cancer, and it started this like mass hysteria of people just foregoing sunscreen, even though like we know the biggest contributor to skin cancer is the sun. And this isn't new information. We've known this for hundreds of years. Societies have avoided the sun because they know it's associated with aging. They know it's associated with melanoma. But for whatever reason, even though this is a very established idea, people think like, oh no, the sun is fine. No, it's the increased use of skin cancer. It's the increased use of sunscreen that's fueling like the skin cancer rates going up, even though it's the fact that skin cancer detection technology has improved since the 70s, which is why there's an uptick. Same thing. It's like, I don't know, there's like a chart showing like the increase in the number of left-handed people. I'm left-handed, for example, because like back in the earlier part of the 20th century, before that, it was like forbidden to be left-handed. It was associated with being sinister. The reason we have words like the etymology of the word left is bad. So historically, people just weren't allowed to be left-handed. But that doesn't mean that they didn't exist. Same thing with skin cancer or any cancer. Like it existed. People just didn't have the means to detect it, or something else probably killed them all first.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So fascinating.
Interesting. So can you help demystify that? I've been hearing a lot about like the nanoparticles getting into the bloodstream and a lot of the concern with sunscreens around there. Do you have any clarity for people in that regard?
So the research is still murky around like nanoparticle zinc. And honestly, most sunscreen brands don't even use nanoparticle zinc to begin with. So it's already not that common. But two, whether or not it gets into the bloodstream, the jury is still out on that. But also one thing I guess I didn't realize this connection earlier, but a lot of people do get tattoos, and tattoos use the same pigments as cosmetics. And nobody bats an eye about injecting the pigment directly into the bloodstream, because that is how tattoo ink gets embedded into the skin. And people have been tattooing with zinc and iron oxides for literal centuries without any adverse effect. But we're concerned about topically applied nanoparticle zinc going into sunscreen, where whether or not it's absorbed is still debatable. But either way, we know what happens when zinc gets into the bloodstream via tattoos, and it's not that it's not really an issue.
Yeah. Right. Millennia. I mean, we have mummies that are tattooed from head to toe with like, tools and tools and minerals, or tools and coals. And it's interesting. That's a really interesting point.
Well, it leads us. Oh yeah, no, go ahead, Javon.
Yeah, but the nice thing about zinc is that it is a mineral, and it has been around for the entire course of probably human civilization. I know we weren't using it until like about the last 120 years, but either way, it has historical precedence, as do like titanium dioxide and the iron oxide. So we know when they're not contaminated with lead, they are fine. And as far as the chemical filters, a lot of people are saying like, oh, avobenzone gets into the bloodstream, and a part of it does, but from the research I found, like in the general understanding that most of the regulatory bodies like EU and Europe and Asia follow is that it gets metabolized. It does not linger in the bloodstream. Like the bioavailability decreases over like a couple of weeks. Because a lot of ingredients are absorbed in a small amount, but they are removed from the body within a month.
You know,
Interesting.
we hear so much, Javon. I'm sure I know that you probably read a lot of things and you're seeing a lot of things out there on social media and just, even in magazines today. I think so much of it, and you'll agree, is marketing, right? I mean, we all agree on this. Everyone who works in the industry, in front of the camera, behind the scenes, putting the makeup on, making the makeup, etc. Marketing really regulates how people purchase and how people buy. And we could talk for hours about the nonsense of marketing. And you brought up some great points about, what makes sense, what is real and what is false. But for our listeners out there, I think so many women, especially as we get older, we feel we've done it all, we've seen it all, we've bought it, we've used it. Is there a trick, though, to cutting through all that and actually reading an ingredients list? What do you think is the best way when a woman picks up, or a man picks up a product and goes to say, I'm going to buy product X versus product Y, and looks at the ingredients? What's the best tip you can give as to what to look for, how to actually read a list, how to even know what all that stuff on the box means?
It's really difficult because a lot of like one ingredient can have the same name on the inky, but be 100 different like raw materials, like silicone, dimethicone, for example. There are dozens of different molecular weight and viscosity classes of dimethicone. Like the most common, I think, is dimethicone 350 centistokes because it gives you like that nice cushiony feel. But then you have dimethicone that's like one centistoke that's pretty much volatile, it evaporates, very lightweight. And then you have the thicker stuff that's pretty much like lip gloss consistency. So it's hard to gauge the texture off an ingredient list because so many variables like that go into place, and of course concentration. But as far as actives, it's helpful because a lot of times brands will fairy dust, what we call in the industry, fairy dust things into the formula just for marketing claims, like you mentioned, and it's not really their efficacy. And if you're buying a product because of that specific ingredient, it should perform. And of course, marketing does have a place. Like most cosmetics at the end of the day do about the same thing. So marketing is the main way brands will brand themselves. But if you, let's say, had a favorite niacinamide serum and you go and buy a product that claims to have niacinamide, you want to make sure that niacinamide is actually there so you can get that like similar results. And the way you do it is like the current, I guess, rule is that the ingredients are listed in order from greatest to least concentration until you get to like a certain point where there's like a 1% line, and after that, it's anything goes. But most actives are usually efficacious between like 5 to 20%. Like niacinamide sweet spot is 5%. Vitamin C, the ascorbic acid version of vitamin C, is roughly 20% is like the sweet spot for that. And then you have things like retinol where, it's never above 1% because it's just gonna be too irritating. But that's the exception. Most actives usually have to be around 5 to 20%. But if it's at the bottom of the list, and they're claiming that active is doing all of these things, okay, that's when you should go through the ingredient list and be like, and is it really doing what it claims?
Right. Like we used to always say when I was doing training and education for luxury skincare brands, we would always say the first 5 ingredients that you read on a label are going to have the highest percentage of that ingredient in the product.
Mm-hmm.
Anything after that number, as you said, is sort of the sprinkling, a little bit of fairy dust. We touched or we waved the ingredient over the product. It sort of becomes secondary. It's not really as powerful. So do you agree with that? It's those first few ingredients. If you see those and you're reading a label, those are the ones that are going to sort of have the most efficacy in a product?
Yes, in general. Again, some exceptions with very potent ingredients like hyaluronic acid or retinoids, but in general, most actives, yeah, you want them to be probably within like the first 6 because, especially with something like vitamin C, you want to make sure it actually is doing something and it's at usage level.
So you want to make sure, to recap, you want to make sure that the hero ingredients on the front of your label are not on the bottom of the deck in the back of your bottle.
Yes, you want to make sure the hero ingredients, like if you're buying a vitamin C serum, again, that's the main thing it's marketed as, vitamin C serum. You want to make sure that serum is actually within the first five. Because vitamin C, you need a higher concentration. I've seen a bunch of serums on the market, like $80 like luxury category serums where the vitamin C, for one, is not the most efficacious form, which is ascorbic acid. And two, it's like towards the bottom of the ingredient list.
Yeah.
You're not getting that brightening effect. Niacinamide, similar thing. Like it's sprinkled in there, like, oh, niacinamide, 1% niacinamide, it's not doing much.
I see that a lot, especially with niacinamide and bakuchiol. I worked with both. I formulated with both, and you need a little bit more, at least 5%. I believe for both. I know for niacinamide it's 5. I believe bakuchiol is 5% as well, just to start seeing clinicals on it. And I pick up some of these creams that have niacinamide or bakuchiol, whatever, and I look and they're like way down there. And I always think that's so sinister. And it's such a dirty pool, it's like cheating. And I just feel for women that are buying and investing. And, when you purchase cosmetics, you have hopes, you have desires, you're investing hard-earned money, you're investing emotion into it too, because you might have a lot of emotion wrapped up in dark spots or pigmentation or different things that you're looking to prevent, correct, erase. And there's nothing worse than, buying something and feeling like you got duped. So that's why we love breaking through this with you. And I'm sure you see in TikTok, like long lists of the same person that's liked your videos, and you can tell they're just going through your account for hours watching all of your videos, because I did at first, and it's so helpful. You're definitely doing and providing a major service out there to women. I have a question for you about proprietary ingredients, particularly in the luxury category. We see a cream for, $300, $400, $500, sometimes even $600 and $700, and it'll have a pretty basic IL, and which means IL means ingredient list for everyone following. Sometimes we refer to it as a deck, an ingredient deck, or an IL. It'll have a basic IL, but then it has a proprietary ingredient, and they do not have to disclose what that is. Sometimes they'll do a lot of, jazz hands and brouhaha around what it is. And I know legally they don't have to disclose, particularly if they've filed intellectual property around it. Some brands go out of their way to explain what it is and how they get there, but we don't really have a way of knowing if that's true. We just have to hope and try it, look for results, read reviews. But the rules have changed with the FDA. Does that affect, how do you feel about, I should back up. My question is two-part. How do you feel about proprietary ingredients, the transparency there, and has that transparency changed with the new FDA regulations?
Can we use specific brands?
Absolutely.
We could use two. So one brand that I think does a good job of talking about its proprietary ingredients is Botter. And a brand that kind of seems like it's just giving you like, woo-hoo-hoo, we sing to our formulas, would be La Mer.
Yeah, I was going to mention those too. That's what I was like, can we say the brands? So with Augustina's Botter, they have, what is it, TCF8 complex. So even though it's trademarked, they still have to disclose the components in the ingredient list unless they file like an exception with the, I forgot the name, the International Nomenclature Organization. I forgot the actual name, but like with new things like extracts, that's usually what it's hidden under. It's an extract. It doesn't really tell you the actual chemical components of the extract. You just know that it's extracted from this source. I know Tatcha does this as well with their Hasadai extract, which is a blend of like 4 botanicals, but they still list botanicals in the ingredient list. And I think Augustina's Botter does as well, but it goes, I think it's a peptide, right? It's a special peptide. We don't know what that peptide actually does because there is no public research on it. And even with the new FDA law, that won't change because they did go through the proper channels to list that ingredient, but we don't know if that ingredient's actually efficacious because They do have patents, but patents, what people don't understand, doesn't necessarily mean the product works. It just means that they protected their asset. Same thing with the
Right.
trademark.
That's what's so important for people to know. And we're not bashing any of these brands here, but just because someone has protected it doesn't mean that it's been proven clinically to be effective. Sometimes putting something under patent or protecting it with intellectual property is part of the marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, because it makes it sound unique. In this case, it is. Like no other brand can claim they have this technology, or especially TCFA technology. And with La Mer, I forgot the name of their technology, but I know it's based off of algae, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have
seaweed.
Yeah, seaweed. La Prairie, which uses I was gonna say escargot. No, the caviar. These caviar.
They're caviar.
Caviar.
Right. Caviar.
It's almost like the whole industry. I remember when I was working in the luxury, it was like everybody had like a food. We had like La Prairie with caviar. We had La Mer with miracle broth, which they claim, it's sort of like everybody had a food. It was like, are we eating our skincare now?
Gotta make it stand out. And I get it for a luxury thing. And I guess when they came up with these concepts, it was like unheard of to use like seaweed and caviar and skincare. So like, you really added to the whole Lux feel like, hey, I'm paying $300 for the skincare. What is that extra something I'm getting? From the efficacy level, I don't think you're getting any better results from that than like a good masstige product around $78, because I think I've mentioned this before on my channel. Like there is a plateau where the price point and the efficacy doesn't change. It just flatlines because there are expensive ingredients, but at the end of the day, there's only so much skincare can actually do for your skin. Like all these celebrities that hype up La Mer and Butter, even though the products are great, most of the results are coming from, chemical peels and laser and microneedling, because that's actually going under the skin. Well, most skincare at the end of the day does not get absorbed that easily. Like the skin is really a good barrier keeping things out, which another myth which people don't understand.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit.
Talk
to us a little bit more about that, Javon. I've been hearing a lot about the Daltons and the peptides, and can peptides even penetrate the skin? People don't realize that our skin it's our largest organ. It's there to protect and expel, through sweat and through other biological ways. It's there. It absorbs, it protects, and it expels things from the body. But it's a really good waterproof organ, so it is hard to get things in. Can you tell us a little bit more about your philosophy there?
Yes. So in general, I'm like anti-peptide because of that. Where peptide is pretty much the new collagen, where 10 years ago people were like, oh, collagen is great for your skincare, and then the public realized that collagen as a protein is way too big to be absorbed by the skin at all. You can only get collagen by like synthesizing it in your body by eating the right foods, the amino acids that then get generated and converted into collagen. With peptides, there is research showing that it can actually improve your skin, but most of them are too big. And there are like different delivery systems. Like you said, there's the Dalton rule. So usually the school of thought is that if a molecule is above 500 Daltons, it's too big to be absorbed by the skin. There are exceptions, like with everything, but it's a general rule we follow in skincare. And a lot of peptides have like a Dalton of like 900, if not 1500. And brands, or the vendors, I should say, will have like some complicated way that, oh yeah, we use this delivery system, like using some type of solvent like dimethyl isorsabide or ethoxydiglycol, which is used in a lot of vitamin C serums like SkinCeuticals, to help increase the penetration. And those can help get the peptide, below the subcutaneous layer of the skin. But most brands don't use that with peptides. And peptides are also sensitive to heat. Like if it's a hot process formula, the peptide might not even be active by the time it is cooled down. So it has to be added at like a low temperature. So because I formulated a product with peptides and I didn't know that they were like heat sensitive, and then my boss was like, oh no, you can't add this above 50 degrees because it just deactivates it. Like even though it's not a protein, it still functions like a protein, and proteins have like a denaturing temperature. Same thing with peptides.
So I wonder if if certain peptides deactivate above 50 degrees, our body temperature, would our body temperature deactivate?
I don't know. Well, yeah, because our body is 98 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 degrees.
Yeah.
What 50 degrees Celsius? I'm thinking Celsius.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
no, our body should not be 120
Okay.
degrees Fahrenheit.
No,
I was going to say, wait a minute. We've uncovered something here.
But still, you have a good point though, because some peptides do deactivate above 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 100 Fahrenheit. So that is a good point though, that because some proteins really are that sensitive. I think the idea is like you don't want to keep it at that temperature for long. It's not like as soon as it gets to that temperature, it just stops. So from a manufacturing perspective, you want to avoid that if you can. But that still is a good point though. Like if you're outside in like a humid environment, or if you have a fever and you apply it, like is it affecting the efficacy of that product?
So if you're having a hot flash, are you deactivating your product? I mean, come on, right?
We're definitely a little steamy around here.
And
my products are getting a little warm.
But one thing I will say, peptides are great humectants. They're great at, binding water to the skin. And that's usually what I recommend peptide serums for. Like get an affordable one like Good Molecules or The Ordinary. Get a peptide serum to help like plump up the skin, like hyaluronic acid would do, or glycerin. But in terms of doing things like, it's going to reverse your wrinkles. For one, legally brands can't even make that claim for real because that's a direct claim, like claiming it's going to actually go in and actually go under the skin barrier and actually reverse the wrinkles, like stretch out the muscles and make the skin taut. Those are drug claims. And retinol gets around it. Well, half of retinoids are drugs anyways, like tretinoin. So that's not really a problem with retinols. But with peptides, again, the research is still very sparse. Like there's dozens of papers on peptides, but it's about a different peptide. So really, each peptide really only has like maybe 1 or 2 papers associated with it. That's not enough.
Wow.
Right.
It's funny. We're talking about these ingredients and, and the research behind them. I think one of the broadest terms, I mean, besides peptides and collagens, and we could spend hours breaking down each ingredient and nothing would make me and Hillary happier than to have that conversation with you one day when you have a week. But using such a blanket statement in our industry, we always hear anti-aging. And, at LifeGLOSS, we try to say to our, to our listeners, it's pro-aging, but for all intents and purposes, that whole category of anti-aging. I think that in your opinion, are there 3 ingredients that you would consider our listeners that they should have their eyes out for if they're talking about the world of anti-aging or mature skincare? What are the 3 top ingredients you think we should be looking for in a product? And on the flip side of that, what are 3 ingredients we should really stay away from, in your opinion?
So definitely you need an SPF regardless of what else you do. So some type of sunscreen active, and it needs to be a dedicated SPF, not SPF from your foundation. That's not doing anything. Not an SPF stick. It needs to be an actual SPF cream. First and most important one. Then also retinoids. I like retinal, which is spelled Retinal instead of with an O. It's an aldehyde. It works a little bit faster than retinol, which is more common, but it's a little bit more gentle too because you don't need as much. So retinol is great for that as well, for anti-aging. And 3, I would say ceramide, because you want to make sure your skin maintains its barrier function, because it doesn't matter how many actives you slather on. Actives, of course, make the barrier compromised a little bit. You want to make sure you have a barrier cream to support that, because also a lot of wrinkles show up by having dehydrated, damaged skin. Fine lines.
100%.
It's true.
What are 3 that you think we should either stay away from? I mean, I hate good and bad in anything, but 3 that maybe you think are either overhyped, overmarketed, or just really don't do anything.
Overpriced.
Overpriced, yeah.
The jury is still out on whether or not bakuchiol actually does anything. I mean, it works, but it pales in comparison to actual retinol. It's only really a good alternative for people who just can't handle retinoids. But I don't think the average consumer, if they have sensitivity issues, should be going out and buying bakuchiol because the price is super expensive. It's marketed as phytoretinol. It's not retinol, but that's how it's marketed as. And they charge like $100 for it sometimes. Like, no, just get an actual retinoid if your skin can handle it. I don't think, like, I don't think it's a bad ingredient. It's not doing what you want it to. Another ingredient would be vitamin C is great. I guess anything overly harsh. So even though AHAs are great, you got to use them in moderation, like all good things. It's easy to overdo it. It's easy to get, like, I saw a video yesterday of a girl who got like a chemical burn for like leaving an acne medication, which I know older mature audience don't necessarily have to deal with, but acne still can pop up with menopause. But they
Sure.
used some type of salicylic acid and they left it in their face and then they did a steam treatment right after it. And that just made it all the worse. She had to go to the hospital. It looked terrible. And that's just going to make her skin take that much longer to heal. And that can, damaging the skin and inflaming the skin can increase the signs of aging as well. So making sure your skin stays gentle, don't overuse any type of acid. However, I will say that another ingredient that's not readily available in skincare, except for like Biologique Recherche P50 lotion, that does work, but it comes with a cost, is phenol. Like phenol pills, which I don't know how they're still legal, are great at removing surface wrinkles and fine lines. However, it comes with a risk of like heart attacks if the procedure is not performed immediately, but it gives you phenomenal results.
Right.
Amazing, isn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
the things we do for beauty. I know. So
And
that brings me to an interesting question, Javon. Two questions when it comes to cocktailing. So I hear from a lot of brands that want to sell people 5 and 6 and 7 different serums, and that, you should use this one in the morning, this one at night. You can cocktail, and they want to sell you 5 and 6 different serums to layer in certain ways. And they tell you, oh, well, this ingredient will cancel this out, and this ingredient will cancel that out. Versus some brands say, well, we're going to formulate to get 5 or 6 actives into a formula in a stable base where they are compatible with each other. What are your thoughts about independently cocktailing? Can ingredients, quote unquote, cancel each other out? Or is that marketing speak? Are the bases in those sometimes what are contraindicated? And can you formulate, responsibly with multiple actives to give someone a little more bang for their buck?
I still think the best approach is layering individual active serums at like high use levels or moderate use levels, because that way you're allowing each layer to absorb. And the issue of them being combined is mainly if they're stored long term together, like the whole not mixing niacinamide with vitamin C. You can, because it takes like months for that process to happen. But in a skincare ingredient that's going to be sitting on your shelf for sometimes years, we don't mix ascorbic acid with niacinamide because it'll generate nicotinic acid, and that can be irritating. So, but you can mix it with other forms of vitamin C. It's case by case. But I've seen a lot of brands really hype up like, oh, like there's a new brand. It was like, oh, we have 7 actives. And I'm like, I just know they're not all at efficacy level, because that just will be a formulation nightmare. So that's another indicator of whether or not your product is actually working. If they have too many actives and they're claiming, oh, we have 7 actives, maybe 1 or 2 of those are doing stuff, but you can't have all of them at use level because they're going to be fighting. Like niacinamide prefers a pH of 6. Ascorbic acid prefers a pH of like 3 to 4. They're not compatible in the same formula. Then you have AHAs, which the FDA recommends using them between like 3.5 to 4.5, I think is the range for over-the-counter products. So you can have that with ascorbic acid. Retinol, I'm not sure of the actual pH range that's supposed to be at, but it's really hard to stabilize retinoids. They can conflict with each other. Also, like kojic acid. Kojic acid is another AHA I see sometimes. Wait, is it an AHA? I know it's an acid. I don't know if it's considered an AHA, but it is hard to stabilize. And I know few products on the market that claim to have kojic acid and retinol, and I'm like, how are you getting these very 2 unstable actives to play nice together in a stable formula?
Right.
So sometimes
And that pH is a really interesting conversation. I've seen some things with vitamin C ester. So then they can work with some of the other, ester friendly actives, and they can be more stable. So if you use like a vitamin C ester, then you can get more actives in there, like particularly anti-inflammatory actives.
right.
I think seems to be calming.
I think you bring up an incredible point though, Javon, for the, for the consumer that's listening to us, or the individual that's not in our industry like we all are, and we know all these terms, and we know all these ingredients. I think you said something so powerful. It's like sometimes less is best. Like the more ingredients, if there's 7 actives, it's almost like a tomato sauce, right? You don't want like 53 ingredients in there.
Mhm.
You just want a few really good ingredients that are going to do something.
When it
um
comes to actives.
yeah, when it
Mhm.
comes to actives, be careful out there
When it
by
comes
just
to like
getting.
acid actives.
Yes, I think that you can do too much. And Hillary and I talk about this all the time. And we've both had clients we've seen when we've done makeup on individuals that you can just tell they're just doing so much stuff. And the poor little skin can only take so much. So I
Yes.
think you bring up a great point when we talked about our
Right.
good ingredients, our bad ingredients. But be careful. If something says it can do everything, and do your laundry, be careful about it,
Be
like
careful about
really
that.
like take a moment and say, wait a second, what does my skin need right now?
Right.
Mhm.
And
It's
move forward from
true.
there.
Like I see clients who come to me and they say, "Oh, I'm exfoliating, I'm doing all of these things, but my skin is still so dry." And I say, "Your skin is not dry. That's a micro scab because your
Right.
your barrier is compromised
Yeah.
so close to the dermis that your skin is trying to protect itself." So I do see multi-active products in the anti-inflammatory and hydrating category, which is why I brought up the vitamin C ester with hydrating, where those are compatible. So if it's an anti-inflammatory, which is a claim we can't say, but if it's a calming,
Right.
soothing, then you can get some peptides or even some bakuchiol or some other things that may or may not be um, as good for your skin, but you can squeeze those in. But active multi-acids are scary to me.
Siobhan, is there a new ingredient out there that we should keep our eyes on that we don't know about?
No. I mean,
Everything's been done.
there are several new, like, and I talked about this too. Like, are we reaching the limits of skincare advancement as far as technology is concerned? There are new ingredients coming out every year. Are they replacing retinol as the gold standard for anti-aging or pro-aging, as we will say? Not necessarily. Like, I feel like most of the developments mainly for marketing, just to say like, oh, we're using this new ingredient. Like, instead of hyaluronic acid, there's like polyglutamic acid, which absorbs up to 1,500 times its weight in water. But okay, but even with hyaluronic acid, you never really get that full 1,000 times its weight because it's so finicky. You can end up like soaking the moisture out. Like in theory, it sounds great, but in practice, like it's not doing anything different than glycerin. At the end of the day, it's just a new ingredient.
Right. And
Interesting.
so, Javon, before we switch gears and talk about Javon Ford Beauty, we would love to know, for those that have been listening along and they're like, okay, I'm starting to get it, but now I know that it's very scary out there. Can you tell us some of your favorite products for people that are like, okay, now just tell me what to get. You're a cosmetic chemist. Tell me what to get, like for retinol, for a ceramide, for this or the other. You can name whatever brand, whatever formula. What are your like 3 things for a skin over 40 products that you would recommend people get?
I like Murad Retinol. I forgot the actual product name. Just Google Murad Retinol. They only have one Retinol product. They have one for the eye too. That one's really good. I think it's like the Resculpt serum. There is also my favorite SPF would be, I guess I have a couple. I love Charlotte Tilbury's UV primer, and I love Murad's Environmental Shield. It's like a mineral SPF. It's the only mineral SPF I've ever used that did not leave a white cast.
Ooh.
But it's $72, but it's so good. But it also has like skin brightening benefits as well. And also Naturium has a really affordable line of retinol, and their SPF is really good too. Don't get it in your eye like their Dew Glow, but it's really good. It's only like $16. And then another ingredient I would say for ceramide, because I'm not really big on ceramides at the moment, because they're in like so many products. It's not like you really have to go out and buy a ceramide serum.
Okay.
Just get like a good moisturizer that does not have any actives in it, that does not claim it's doing like brightening, just a good solid moisturizer.
Which one do you like? Do you know one? Do you have one off the top of your head? Just a good slather it on,
Or
drink
say
it
a
up?
Korean beauty brand, Astura or
Okay.
Ilium, because I did a campaign for them. Like I tried their products for the past month, and they are really good. They don't have any fragrance, super gentle, very thick creams, and great for mature skin.
Which
We'll have
company
you
is
send
that?
us.
Wait, which company is that? Say that again.
Astura, Aestura, and Ilium, they're both Korean brands.
Fantastic. Korean
Okay.
Beauty's really doing some
Oh yeah.
innovative formulas. You like those?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll list those.
Yeah.
Is there a vitamin C that you really like?
I've gone through so many different vitamin C serums, and it's hard for me to say this one's working because I'm not doing
Ah,
like controlled variables. Uh,
okay.
but I would say in terms of like what I feel like I've gotten the most results from was like Mayla. They have like a $30 Glow Makers, the name of their vitamin C serum.
Okay.
Keep it refrigerated because it's not as stable as like SkinCeuticals. Um, and then for an American Western moisturizer, I would say Tatcha. I love Tatcha's water cream for oily skin, or their the I guess the dry skin version, which is in a purple bottle. I forgot the name of the product, but like Tatcha creams are really good.
Good. Okay. Okay. That's
Great.
great.
Are there any so you listed a few of the class brands. Are there any mass brands or masstige that you have your eye on? I know you
Mhm.
mentioned Naturium. I really
Yep.
like, I think she's doing a fantastic job.
Yes, Susan Yara. Another mass brand, because there's classic Cetaphil and CeraVe.
Love.
They are great for like a barrier function. In terms of actives, I don't care for them as much because they're only like $16, which a lot of actives sometimes are more expensive than that, especially the size they give you. Like the size of CeraVe and Cetaphil bottles are like huge, like 16 ounces. But for a general barrier cream, they are phenomenal. And I think Cetaphil, like I didn't know this was, or CeraVe, like their name comes from ceramides. I didn't even know that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about La Roche-Posay? You like them? You like any of these, the French
I like La
company?
Roche-Posay's cleansers. I don't like
Okay.
their moisturizer as much. It feels a little too synthetic, even though like most of them are, but it feels like acrylate. So I don't
Yeah,
care for their moisturizer as much, but their cleansers are world class.
it's great. I
Fabulous.
agree.
Okay. So we'll put together a little love list because I know people are just absorbing all of this and they want to know what should
Yes.
I put? What should I
Yeah,
use for my retinol? What should I use for vitamin C? What should I use for hydration?
that's right.
So it's
And
it's
it's
helpful to
interesting.
know.
We talk to a lot of dermatologists too, and Hillary and I are both friends with many. And a
Mm.
lot of the brands that you mentioned, a lot of the dermatologists are in agreement with you. So that's fantastic.
One last question before we switch gears. You mentioned briefly dimethicone.
Hmm.
Can we spend just a few moments talking about dimethicone?
Yes, please.
There's so many misconceptions. Some people will say that it's hydrating, it's occlusive in a good way because it helps to keep all the good ingredients in. Some people will say that it's will clog your pores and cause acne. But what most people don't know, and you sprinkled this in earlier, and I wanted to just circumvent back to it for a second. You said that there are so many different viscosities from something that will almost absorb, will evaporate quickly, to something as
Hmm.
heavy as a lip gloss. So what really matters here is viscosity, is what I've heard. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, and even still, the molecular weight for dimethicone is too big to actually be absorbed by the skin, so it's never going to go into the bloodstream. Silicones don't do that. And in theory, they don't clog pores because they don't sink into pores. They're too big, regardless
Okay.
of like the viscosity of dimethicone. However, a lot of people will claim that dimethicone, like when they use silicone products, they end up with clogged pores, and that could just be just from inclusive action, just having something over the skin and maybe coupled with another ingredient that might, because I know like with retinoids, if you use an occlusive over retinoids, it can make the product penetrate deeper. Maybe the same thing could be said for like you using like a product with silicone that has something that might actually clog your pore, but the silicone is just making that go deeper into the skin because there's an occlusive barrier. So even though the silicone itself isn't clogging your pores, it still might be like problematic for certain individuals. So I won't say that like no ingredient doesn't have potential to clog your pore because everybody has different skin, everybody has different sensitivities and allergies. I feel like any ingredient can be problematic for an individual, but in general, no, silicones are non-comedogenic.
Great.
Or maybe
Okay,
they're
and
not.
it comes down to cleansing too, how well you're cleansing to get that off of the skin.
Oh,
They might
yeah.
not be removing, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like even with my blush, people were asking like, "Oh, is it non-comedogenic?" I'm like, I'm not doing that testing because I think it's pointless to do comedogenic testing because it's not. For one, they don't even use people who actually have acne for those studies, and they're doing it on the back. Um, which acne is a thing, but some people get acne that don't get acne on their face. There's still like a different like sebum composition on the back than there is on the face. The face has more sebum than the back. It's more likely to get like acne than the back, depending on the individual. Like so many
Which is where
variables. I'm
they
like,
do those
no.
tests.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yep. Or the historical way of using rabbit's ears.
Right. Right. Incredible. So you mentioned there your blush. So let's pivot and talk a little bit about, and I have a lab sample. I am a very happy girl. I've been using this on set. I recently did a concealer photo shoot where everybody needed to look natural and radiant. It was all about the concealer concentrate, but we wanted to see skin because we were only using it in partial areas. And your Georgia peach, I used on 13 models from fair to deeply pigmented, and it is beautiful. This is the first product that Javon Beauty has introduced. So tell us everything and congratulations. We're so happy for you.
That's incredible. Congratulations, Javon. That's
Thank
incredible.
you.
Tell us all
I'm
about
almost
it.
sold out. Actually, I only have like 150, 180 orders left out of the 1,000 I made.
Yay!
I hope you reordered because I talk about it all the time and it's amazing.
Reorder request.
When people
But
start getting it, it's going to be incredible.
I came up with the concept. Honestly, it was like a random video I made last year because I've spoken on bromo acids for a while. And bromo acids are basically the pigments that are responsible for indelible lipsticks, a lipstick that's supposed to be permanent, that stains all day. Color changing lipstick, they're all bromo acids. The color changing blushes and glosses that you see today, it keeps coming and going in waves. And I don't know, it had a resurgence and it's been sticking around for a minute. And the idea is it is pH reactive. I don't like to say it adjusts the pH of your skin because we all have the same pH range. So, but I will say that the reason it looks like it's a different color on everybody's skin is because it is fluorescent. And that coupled with like the sheer consistency kind of like has like a little color theory light. What's the word? I guess like blue eyes aren't actually blue. It's from light scattering. Same principle, where depending on your skin tone and how the light bounces off of it and it's UV reactive and fluorescent, it can look anywhere from like peach to really fair skin to like a nice juicy orange on like deep dark brown skin.
Oh, it's so pretty. I mean, oh my
It's so
God. And
pretty.
the glow is absolutely beautiful from that product. All right,
Yes.
sign me up.
Tell us
I need
about the base that's in this because it doesn't grab. I use it on my cheeks. I also use it on my lips.
Mhm.
And I've always had a hard time with bromos on my lips because even if I don't think my lips are dry, the minute I put something with a bromo on,
Yeah,
I
they can
see
be drying. Yeah,
anything dry on my lips.
yeah.
This never looks dry. It's juicy and fresh. And you call this Georgia peach, which is perfect. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and I even forgot about that aspect of bromo acids, but the reason that they fell out of use in the 50s, because in the 50s they've had long wear lipstick. It was really popular in the 50s. It's because bromo acids were kind of irritating and dried out the mucous membrane of the lips. And a lot of people didn't like that. So even though you got that long wear 24-hour, literally 24-hour lip stain, it just looked and felt terrible. And even some of the lip stains now, a lot of them, that's the problem. Like they feel very dry and they cling to every pore and crevice of your lips. So when I made this last year, I was like, let me put it in an oil gel, which you don't see as much. Most lipsticks now, the stains anyway, are water-based. Lipsticks are oil, lip stains tend to be water. Water is great, but like, yeah, it dries out so easily. It has like no cushion, no emollients. It's just water. It's hydrating, sure, but hydration is not the only thing your skin needs. Like we have sebum for a reason. We make sebum for a reason. So I was like, okay, let me use an oil gel, which are more expensive because it's hard to gel in oil. You have to use like a special agent. Like this is using like a polyamide structure with a blend of caprylic capric triglyceride, like triglyceride. It's a mouthful. Also called
Yeah.
MCT oil at like Whole Foods, and castor oil. Castor oil, super cushiony. It's the base of most lipsticks, historical lipsticks, as you know, because it has, that like that soft skin feel. And when formulated properly, it's not overly sticky. And it has like a really high refractive index, which means it's shiny because it has like that nice little glow on top of it being fluorescent.
How do you get the fluorescence?
Just a bromo acid pigment in general.
Okay.
It's just naturally UV reactive.
Okay. Interesting. It's so good. I have to tell you, it has become like my secret weapon in my kit. And every time I put it on people, they're like, ooh, what did you do to my skin? It looks so fresh and healthy and glowy. What did you do to my skin? And I say, it's Javon Ford, Georgia Peach. What else are you working on? Can you spill the beans? I know you and I were texting, but I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it yet.
We can talk about it. I will be expanding the shade offering because I was like, depending on how well it performs, since I've already like broken even and made my money back already on this before it even launches tomorrow. Tomorrow of filming. I don't know when this is gonna actually go live. I'm like, okay, I'll expand the shade range because a lot of people wanting like a traditional pink, which I thought there were enough pink blushes on the market, which is why I started with orange. But a lot of people are like, no, I want the traditional rosy pink. People want a red, people want a purple. So I will be deciding which of those colors I want to do next, just to, give like a wider range so everyone can have a taste of the sun-kissed glow.
It's wonderful. Well, and even though there are a lot of pink bromos out there are not pink bromos in this formulation. This formulation is magical.
No, thank you.
It's really, really pretty. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It's illuminating without having any shimmer. And that's what it's just so fresh and natural.
Yes.
Love it. I absolutely love it.
And somebody asked me that yesterday. They were like, oh, when I went over the ingredients, they were surprised to learn that there's no mica in the formula.
You can see, that there is no mica. And there's, it's interesting. I'm so happy that you didn't put any in this first version. Who knows what you're going to get up to in the lab with the next versions. But it's really nice to see. Not all women want that heavy mica. They don't want necessarily that heavy, light particles and the glimmer and glitter and all that. They want a glow that looks like it comes from within, especially when you're talking about women that are more mature or with fine lines around the eyes that go deep into the cheeks. They want something that's just glowy and just makes you look and feel beautiful, because that's what our industry is all about at the end of the day.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And mica, as Hillary pointed out to me like weeks ago, shimmers in general, mainly because the mica can cling to fine lines and it can accentuate
100%.
them. We don't want that.
No, we don't want that, Javon.
No, we don't.
No.
We like to hydrate it. So if you were to give us like just a really quick sound bite, I can tell you all day as I have, this instantly gives my skin a peachy, beautiful, natural glow with a coat of hydration that doesn't look greasy. So if you were going to give us just a quick little soundbite about what is Georgia Peach, ta-da.
Okay. So this is Javon Ford Beauty's Georgia Peach. The shade is Georgia Peach. So this is Javon Ford Beauty's Sun-Kissed Glow in shade Georgia Peach, and it's designed for textured skin, because I feel like that's an often overlooked market, even though most people have some type of texture enhanced, like enlarged pores, wrinkles, fine lines. So it's made of a unique gel cream base, so it glides on all skin types, especially textured skin, without settling in the fine lines, while giving you a very fresh, dewy glow.
Amen.
I'll take 10. I'll take 10.
And as I said earlier, I used it on 13 different women, from super pale, fair skin, all the way through the Fritz index, all the way to deeply, deeply pigmented, all over 40. Gorgeous. And it just gave a radiance and a health. So bravo. We cannot wait to see the other shades that you do. And we're going to be asking you for eye products and lip products. And this is the beginning of something very, very big for you.
Hopefully.
It will be. It will be. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. I don't know of another cosmetic chemist. I can't name anyone off the top of my head that is, producing a line of beauty right now. Like I just can't. If you said who's a great chemist that's doing, a makeup line
we
right
have
now,
we have Stat, but Stat is just doing skincare.
Beauty
Stat's not
Stat with Ron
color,
Robinson.
beauty Stat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a
Color.
beauty makeup. Like
Oh,
I can't right now
no
name
one.
anybody.
And I think it's also, which I didn't realize this for the longest until I went to makeup in LA last year, that there are very few like color chemists in America. They're mainly in Italy and France and Korea. Well, mainly Italy and Korea. But in terms of America, there aren't that many color chemists. Especially like when I was doing private consultations, they usually just work for like the big brands like L'Oreal and Estee Lauder. But in terms of like the independent circuit, no. So it just isn't.
That's another great point. I love it. I absolutely love it. You're a trendsetter. You're a man who is going to put a lot of things on the map for us, I think.
Indeed. And I'm going to toot your horn a little bit, Javon. One of the things that I really appreciate is we will talk here and there and send texts back and forth. Javon is always imagining and ideating and creating and thinking, what about this and what about that? So I really appreciate your process of looking at the skin and then also looking at ingredients and thinking what if, and going out of the box is too blasé of a term to use, but I imagine that you are sitting around dreaming things up, and that's what real innovation is.
Yeah, that's why I basically flirted with the idea of making a brand for years and haven't done it until now, because I didn't want to launch a brand when there's a similar product on the market. Of course, there are dozens of blushes and cheek stains, but like you said, it's not in like a gel cream, not in this texture. You have like the milk one, but it's a different texture. It's more like a traditional jelly texture. But even so, that's unique. But I just feel like there was like so much innovation that was missing from makeup, like skincare. There aren't many new skincare ingredients that are doing as well as retinoids. In terms of makeup, there aren't any new pigments because that requires global approval, because FDA and EU are very slow to approve new pigments for use in cosmetics. But there are different things you can do with those pigments, like multi-chrome and like refract light off of them to get like 4 different color shifts. And they're different unique textures, but you don't really see them because most big brands are traditional. Even the ones that aren't class, like the prestige brands, they still follow that traditional mindset. Like consumers don't want anything new. They're not used to it.
Right.
But as an indie brand, like might as well. Like I'm a chemist. I don't want to do something that everybody else has. Like give me the fun textures. Like I'm even working randomly because I realized I know how to do this is an eye gloss that actually dries down.
An eye gloss that dries down.
I mean, you also have to remember, Javon, you're a creative chemist. And I say this as a trained actor and someone, I was a theater person too, my whole life. And, you are a creative chemist. You come from that theater background as well as the scientific background. And so I would only imagine you have such an analytical yet creative type brain. And that is such a gift to be a creative person in the world of science. And I think that's a huge point of difference. And that will definitely set you apart out there for sure.
Thank you. That's why I chose this career. Going back to your first questions, like that's why I didn't want to do the theoretical realm. Like, no, I like the technical, but I prefer like a balance. Like my minor was classical voice in college. I would go back and forth between chemistry classes and music classes, using like left and right side of the brain, all that. Like, and so that's how I came across cosmetic chemistry, because I loved how it blended and merged those two like disparate categories.
Well, I think that's your huge point of difference right there, my friend. Absolutely
Javon,
huge point of difference. I don't know anyone like that. Do you, Hill? I I'm thinking here of all the people I know in my 100 years in this industry. I don't know anyone that I know a lot of, chemists and the analytical side people, and then everyone else was creative. But to have those two, a creative chemist, that right there,
I know
that's
one.
He's
Tom Farrer.
right.
he,
You're just
It's
such an
listed.
anomaly. I love it.
Yes.
I
he's
love
the
it.
only one, which is, why I initially reached out to Javon through my vintage beauty TikTok to help
Love
him
it.
have me figure out the mystery of, the 1950
Yeah.
cherries in the snow. So we initially met then,
Oh, right.
and I just fell in love. I fell in love with his approach, with his affect, with the way his mind works, and his
Well,
readiness to share information. So.
Hillary, he's moving in with the Gerdemans. I'm sorry. He's
Well,
mine now.
until that happens, Javon, where can people find you?
Where
How
can
do
we
people
find
support
you? Yes.
How do people support you? Where do they buy your products? Where do they follow you for your advice? Where do they get more of you?
So I'm on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Javon Ford 16. That's the handle. And my brand's website is javonfordbeauty.com. Plain and simple. Wanted to keep it as clean and simple as possible. And you can buy the blush now and look out for updates for shade expansion. And I might even throw some eye gloss samples in some of the bags just to involve the customers as far as the consumer trials, just to get random. Why not? I like to be chaotic sometimes.
Love it.
Well, I'm placing an order when we hang up, so please put an
Yes.
eyeglass in mine.
Yes. And if you're lucky enough to get one of those eyeglass samples, please post photos, tell Javon what you think. It's always great to hear from the audience. And it's like secret treasures.
Love it.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we are going to bookmark your information, and we'd love to have you back as we see new things. We'd love to be part of your upcoming launches, and we want to continue to support you in
Any way we
everything
can.
you do.
Thank you so much.